Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 445 chainsaw. Customer complaint is that he broke the rope. So, it has been my experience that a broken rope is a lot of times the result of a different problem. I mean, this rope here, although it's not factory stock, it's in pretty good shape. I mean, I don't see any frays except for the very end where it's broken. So, is there something going on that made the customer pull on that rope 50 to 100 times before it finally broke? Or is this just a case of an old frayed rope being replaced and someone didn't tie a good knot on the end or something? I mean, I'm looking at that rope right now, and the very end is twisted and frayed. So maybe that's all it is. But we won't know until we look it over a little bit. So digging into this, boy, I was doing so much talking I wasn't even watching what I was doing here. I'm sure we looked in the fuel tank. Looked in the cylinder to make sure it was clean and not scored, because we're not going to put a new starter rope on a scored cylindered engine. Alright, this is an easy start. It's got an extra spring in here, and we have a driver, a spring, and then the pulley with the rope on it. And this spring is captured, so it's not going to go flying on us. So there's our starter pulley with our frayed rope. Not sure why that's frayed like that. Maybe this rope is just really cheap. Or maybe it was too short and he pulled it all the way to the end and broke it. You know, the guy could have a really long arm and physically broke the rope pulling on the cord really hard. So we're going to get a new rope here. This is the style we use for all our starter repairs. And we're going to burn the end so that it doesn't fray. I usually put the rope in a rag like this. And then after I heat it up, I just pull a rope through the rag and it puts a nice clean end on it. I don't have a big, ball of melted rope. I got something that's somewhat tapered that'll push right through a hole like on this starter pulley. And then we're going to put a single overhead knot in that rope. And I left a little bit of rope hanging out on the end of that knot. Probably a little bit more than I should have. That could be trimmed off and the end burnt clean again. But I didn't do it. So now I'm checking the rope thickness. It fits in that pulley, but it drags just a little bit. It's almost too thick of a rope. And I'm thinking about it here. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go with a smaller diameter rope or use this one. And I guess I've decided to use it. I just wanted to fix the end of that knot so it's not going to interfere with the spring. So we're going to pre-wind this pulley with the rope. And then we're going to line up the notch in the bottom of the pulley with the end of the spring, so that the pulley sits flush on top of that spring holder. Now there's a notch in the pulley, and we're going to get this rope to line up in that notch. Just like that. That's going to allow us to wind that rope later. So the spring is not symmetrical. There's one end that's a little different than the other end. So the end that has the kind of bend in the spring, that goes down. And here I'm just trying to work it around the end of that knot that we had in the end of the rope. Alright, we got the spring in place. Now the driver, that has a hole in it to receive the other end of the spring. And then we'll put our screw in that holds the whole mess together. Now we can push the other end of the rope through the eyelet, and you should inspect the eyelet and make sure that it doesn't have any cuts in it or sharp edges in it that are going to cut the rope. Now put your favorite double knot, bulky knot, figure 8 knot, whatever you're going to do. You need a little bit bigger knot on this end so you don't pull the handle through. So you don't pull the rope through the handle. Now we're winding the spring. You can see with the rope in that notch, we're able to clear everything and wind it up. So you put 3 or 4 wraps on it, and then you want to make sure that if the rope's all the way out, you can still turn that pulley, meaning that with the rope all the way out, you're not binding the spring. And that's what we have. We have rope that snaps in place when you let go of it, and when it's fully extended, the spring isn't bound up and wound as tight as it can be. There's still room for it to move freely. Alright, so we got our starter fixed. We're kind of backtracking here a little bit. We got spark. Couldn't really test that before. We didn't have a starter on there with a rope to spin the motor over. So I'm thinking maybe this guy just had a bad piece of rope or put a bad knot at the end of it when he replaced it. So if this thing starts and runs, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Husqvarna 445 that needed a new starter rope. Thanks for watching. Later.